Hey guys, my name's Randy. I'm a freelance work from home voice actor, voiceover artist, narrator, whatever you want to call it. I've been doing YouTube videos and YouTube narration for a really long time, a couple of years now. And over those years, I learned some tips and tricks that helped kind of really make my workflow much quicker. So it takes me less time to get these scripts done. So I want to share this stuff with you today, show you a couple of the tools I use, and hopefully you'll learn something new today that you didn't know. So, first things first, there's two things you're going to need. The first thing is a dog clicker, just like this one you see here. Now, the reason you need a dog clicker is because it's loud and it's distinct, and it sounds like this when you click it into your microphone. Now, why? You'll see. Basically, it creates a unique structure in the waveform that you can visually see, and that'll help you with editing. Second thing you're going to need is what you see on the screen right now. That's Reaper. Reaper is a digital audio workstation. Most people, when they're doing stuff like YouTube narration or whatever, they try to spend as little money as possible, so they use Audacity. Audacity is great. I used Audacity for like a year, but when I switched to Reaper, suddenly it was a lot quicker for me to do all of my narrations. So that's why I stuck with it. Reaper is free for the first 2 months you use it, and after that, it's only $60 and then it's yours forever. Now, $60 might seem kind of steep for people who are doing really cheap YouTube narration, but in those 2 months that you are using Reaper, if you use the tricks I teach you, I guarantee you can cut down your work time enough to where you'll be able to earn more money. So, affording Reaper isn't going to be that crazy of an idea. And who doesn't like more money in their pocket, right? So, let's talk about what Reaper can do that'll make your life easier while you're editing. Reaper is really good with macros. In Reaper, they're called actions. You can see up here at the top, there's an actions list. So let's go ahead and show the actions list. I'm going to show you a couple of the specialized actions that I created that make editing easier for me. Okay? So, first things first, Reaper has something called ripple editing. Basically, whenever you remove a chunk of audio, it'll automatically just slam the two pieces together. So anything that's later in the time, it'll all move forward at the same amount of time. So we use ripple editing for almost everything. So the first and most obvious one that I created is called remove and join. So what this does is this will turn ripple on, right? So ripple can be turned on and off. It will split the items at a time selection. So you highlight the time selection that you want to get rid of, and this will split the item at those ends of your selection. Then the next thing is time selection, remove contents of time selection, moving later items. So it'll get rid of whatever you've highlighted that you've split, and then it'll slam them together using ripple. And then it'll go to the end of the time selection. So that way your cursor is at the end of where you put it. So this is good for if you made a mistake and you want to remove a part of your sentence, like the beginning of the sentence that you messed up, and just move to the part of the sentence where you did it correctly. And I'll show you that. Another tool that I use is the silence, what I call a silence tool. So it's essentially the same thing, except it doesn't move the item. So it turns on ripple. It's unselect all items just to make sure you don't accidentally delete anything that you had selected by mistake. And then it removes selected area of item. So again, you just highlight something that you want to get rid of and you hit E, and it goes away, but it leaves a silence gap, right? And then it turns ripple back on. Last thing that I've created is number seconds of silence. Sometimes when you are doing YouTube narration for certain clients, they want you to leave periods of silence in between sections of a script. Sometimes it's 5 seconds, sometimes it's 1 second. And the reason they ask you to do that is because it's easier for the editor to see in the waveform where the sections begin and end. Usually they just end up cutting out that silence, but it helps them know where it is, so it's easier to edit. So I created this as a tool to kind of make that easier. So what this does is this turns on ripple, and it moves cursor to the start of your time selection. So whatever you select, it'll move your cursor to the beginning of it. For some reason, this has to be in there twice for it to actually work. I'm not really sure why, but you put it in there twice, and then it'll split the items at the time selection, just like with the remove and join. It'll remove the contents of the time selection, moving the later items back, right? It slams them together like ripple. It'll go to the end of that time selection. So wherever it was, it's now, that's where the cursor is. And then it'll do insert silence number of seconds, and you choose the number of seconds. So what'll happen is I'll hit the hotkey for this, which as you can see here is 5, and I use that for 5 seconds because that's typically how much time I put in between my sections. And it'll bring up a window. How much silence do you want to insert? And then I'll say 5 and hit enter, and then boom, it'll just put in 5 seconds of silence. Before this, I used to have to like remove the section and then slowly drag the audio over using like just point and click to try to get it to about 5 seconds. This is always 5 seconds. It's always exactly precise, and it's so much easier this way. And then the last thing is the M button, which just sets a marker in your audio waveform somewhere on the time frame, and you'll see how that works later. Okay, so those are the tools that I use for making editing quicker. You got your dog clicker, you got your macros in Reaper. So what I'm going to do for you right now is I'm going to actually record a voiceover script live, and then I'm going to show you the process of me going through and editing it and getting it ready for whoever ends up doing the audio production, okay? So we're going to go ahead and slide this over. Now here's my script on the left, and here's Reaper on the right. So I can always look at my waveform while I'm recording, just in case something goes wrong. You always want to be able to see your waveform. I've had plenty of instances where I just had it minimized and I realized I forgot to hit record. Okay. So it's good to just have your screen split. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read through it. And if you hear me make a mistake, you're going to hear that sound, and that means I've made a mistake, okay? And you'll see other ways that I use the clicker as I record here, and then I'll explain them all. Okay, here we go. Hysteresis for noise gates. Whether you use Reaper's Regate or Dynamic Split or any other noise gate in Pro Tools or Adobe Audition, hysteresis is an often overlooked but powerful tool for voiceover. Unfortunately, Audacity's noise gate does not have this function. Sorry, Audacity users. Hysteresis can be used to replace the hold function on your noise gate. Setting a hold can leave time for quieter ends of words below the value you set in the gate. Below the value you set in the gate threshold to stay in the recording. This is great for words that end in soft consonants, like M, for example, them. It is also great for hard consonants that you might not say loud enough, like K or T, especially if you're low on breath at the end of a long sentence. However, this also means that the beginning of breaths can start to make their way in before the gate closes, causing your breath to cut out suddenly, creating what is called a gate slam. Here's how hysteresis can fix this. First of all, what is hysteresis? Simply said, hysteresis allows you to set a different value for when your gate closes than when it opens. For example, if you have your gate set to negative 40 decibels, that's the loudness your voice needs to be to open the gate. And if the sound drops below that loudness, the gate will close and not let any sound through. However, if you set your hysteresis to negative 6 decibels, your gate will open at negative 40 decibels, but close at negative 46 decibels. Why is this good? Well, those words that end in M or soft Ks will still go through, since they will likely still be above negative 46 decibels. This allows you to set your hold to 0, since your gate is staying open long enough to catch those ends of words. However, since breaths always have silence right before them, switching from exhaling to inhaling cannot be instant, so there will always be a small window of silence before you can breathe in. This will make sure that the gate is closed before you breathe in, but not before finishing your word. How to start using hysteresis. With all things related to audio processing, different voices and different recording setups mean different values are needed in your FX chain. Experiment with the hysteresis settings in your noise gate. I recommend starting at about negative 6 decibels and go from there. Turn it up and down and listen for the right values for your recording. Remember, the most Remember, your most powerful tool in making sure your audio sounds good are your ears. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new today. Okay, and so there I have recorded my voiceover. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to edit it. Now you can see these big spikes in the waveform. That's the clicker, right? That's the sound. This lets me know certain things about the audio. So at the very beginning of a script, and usually at the end, I'll do a double click, like this one you see here. This is good if you're doing multiple scripts in like one setting. You can look at it, you can see the double clicks indicate the beginning and ends of certain scripts. Here you can see where a mistake was made. And then here where it's I call it a long click, like that. That means the end of a section. So I know that that's where that silence is going to go, however many seconds the audio editor the video editor wants. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. We don't need all this stuff here at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and hit R. Boom, it's gone. Just like that. Easy, right? Now, what I'm going to recommend is this is something that you can do in Reaper that you cannot do in Audacity, which is start listening to your audio and then scroll forward and start editing out the mistakes. You're going to know, based on the waveform, what your mistakes are, based on how they look. Like this is obviously, this is obviously the same as this is the same as this, right? So we know that this is a mistake. So if we listen to it, it'll be the beginning of the same sentence, in theory. Below the value you set in, below the it's below the value. Okay, so we know that's the same. So we've highlighted this mistake, we hit R. And then suddenly, ends of words below the value. It's so seamless, right? You wouldn't even know that I messed up the sentence there. So we're going to do that while we listen back. Now, as you're listening back, really pay attention to what you're saying, because you might have mispronounced a word, you might have missed an entire sentence, in which case it won't really make any sense as you're listening back to it. It's like somebody telling you a story and the sentence is missing. It's weird, right? So let's go ahead and start listening, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to edit out mistakes. Now, what I'm going to also do at this point is I'm going to turn on my effects, okay? The reason I do this is because I want to hear what the final audio is going to sound like. In Audacity, you have to wait until the end to turn on your effects. Reaper uses non-destructive editing, which means that no matter what you do to this audio file, it's always still exactly the way you recorded it. It never actually destroys anything. It only adds layers to it, okay? So for a good example of this is, here's that mistake I made. But the thing is like, all this stuff is still here, right? I'm just choosing to hide it. I'm not actually deleting anything. I'm just saying, hey, don't include that in the final render. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the effects chain that I have, and I'm going to listen back, and I'm just going to edit stuff out as I hear it, okay? Hysteresis for noise gates. Whether you use Reaper's Regate or Dynamic Split or any other noise gate in Pro Tools or Adobe Audition, hysteresis is an often overlooked but powerful tool for voiceover. Unfortunately, Audacity's noise gate does not have this function. Sorry, Audacity users. Hysteresis can be used to replace the hold function on your noise gate. Setting a hold can leave time for quieter ends of words below the value you set in the gate threshold to stay in the recording. This is great for words that end in soft consonants, like M, for example, them. It is also great for hard consonants that you might not say loud enough, like K or T, especially if you're low on breath at the end of a long sentence. However, this also means that the beginning of breaths can start to make their way in before the gate closes, causing your breath to cut out suddenly, creating what is called a gate slam. Here's how hysteresis can fix this. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. What I've done is I finished all the editing. I've edited out all my mistakes. I've put in the silences as I needed them. You need to listen to the whole audio file, okay? Because you never know where you've made a mistake. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and read along here in the script while I listen to it, okay? So again, I'm going to turn on the effects, I'm going to listen to it, and then when we're done, we'll talk a little bit more about it. First of all, what is hysteresis? Simply said, hysteresis allows you to set a different value for when your gate closes than when it opens. For example, if you have your gate set to negative 40 decibels, that's the loudness your voice needs to be to open the gate. And if the sound drops below that loudness, the gate will close and not let any sound through. However, if you set your hysteresis to negative 6 decibels, your gate will open at negative 40 decibels but close at negative 46 decibels. Why is this good? Well, those words that end in im or soft Ks will still go through, since they will likely still be above negative 46 decibels. This allows you to set your hold to 0, since your gate is staying open long enough to catch those ends of words. However, since breaths always have silence right before them, switching from exhaling to inhaling cannot be instant, so there will always be a small window of silence before you can breathe in, this will make sure that the gate is closed before you breathe in, but not before finishing your word. How to start using hysteresis. With all things related to audio processing, different voices and different recording setups mean different values are needed in your FX chain. Experiment with the hysteresis settings in your noise gate. I recommend starting at about negative 6 decibels and go from there. Turn it up and down and listen for the right values for your recording. Remember, your most powerful tool in making sure your audio sounds good are your ears. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new today. Excuse me. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. You're going to notice that sometimes I messed up words, like I said, recording instead of recordings, or maybe I made contractions or whatever. This is going to be up to whoever's hiring you to do the channel. Some people are going to be like, no, you need to read it exactly word for word, and if you make a mistake, you have to re-record it. And some people are going to be like, whatever, as long as you don't say the wrong word, changing the meaning of the sentence, right? A lot of those little filler words usually aren't very important. So here we have our audio file, right? Now, we want to go ahead and render it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn on the effects before I render it. So that way I'm not rendering the raw audio, I'm rendering the audio with the effects on. And again, this is my chain here. I have a gate, I have an EQ curve, and I have a compressor. I'm not going to go into these. If you want to learn more about these, you can find videos on them, or I can explain it later. Feel free to leave a comment below, or you can message me on Discord and I can explain this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the effects, and I'm going to render the file. Okay, actually, before I turn the effects back on, because it messes up my recording, I want to talk about how to render the file. So the most important thing is meeting the specifications of whoever you're rendering the file for. But if they don't have any specifications, what I usually recommend is a sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz, mono, and a wave at 16-bit depth. You might find people that ask for 24-bit or 32-bit depth. That's fine. But if they don't recommend anything, just do 16. Honestly, to the point where you're getting above that, you're kind of hitting things that aren't going to be important for YouTube videos anyway. That's going to be more important for like high form narration for commercials or music production. For now, wave 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz mono is fine. So I'm going to turn on the effects and render it. Okay, so we have rendered the file now, and it's going to be sitting in our audio folder. So save your work. Now, what people will tell you is you need to normalize your audio, right? It needs to be a certain volume to sound good. You can normalize your audio from here. The reason I don't do this is because when my effects are on, it's set to certain levels, right? Anything above 37 decibels is my gate. if I normalize that audio, make it really loud, suddenly all these values are going to be off and it's going to mess with the audio. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new page from a new template, okay? Okay, so this is a template called Finalize with LUFS. This is where I'm going to finalize my audio. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my file. And again, it doesn't look very loud, does it, right? These are kind of small waveforms. So what we're going to do is we're going to normalize this with something called LUFS. LUFS stands for Loudness Unit Full Scale. Essentially, it's become the new standard for how we measure loudness. It used to be a long time ago, we used something called RMS, root mean squared. And that was fine. That was just based on like the science of how audiology works and stuff. LUFS is based on not the science of waveforms and stuff, but it's based on how humans perceive loudness. So it's considered kind of a better way when you're making something that's meant to be consumed by humans. So, for example, if you go to somewhere like Audible, they still do RMS for their loudness. But if you go to somewhere like YouTube or Spotify, they use LUFS. YouTube, I think, normalizes to -19 LUFS. I think it's the same value for Spotify. It might be -16. I don't know. I'll put that information right here on the screen. And we're going to do the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to go to our extensions. Now, you should download the SWS extension. It's free. You can get it online. It's super easy to install in Reaper. And then we're going to use the loudness function, which is based on LUFS. So we're going to analyze, and it's going to tell us how it's not very loud at all, right? 32.4. So we're going to normalize to -23, which is what I prefer. I prefer -23 because I think it sounds better. Yes, it's just going to get turned up when it gets uploaded to YouTube, but I'd rather the audio file I send sound as good as possible to my audio editor or my casting director or whoever, and then wherever they upload it, whatever that program is, can change the volume. I don't care. Okay, now this is normalized to -23 LUFS. Now we're going to see this spike here. This spike looks really loud, right? However, that word however. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use an effect. We're going to use another compressor, and we're going to use a limiter here on our master bus. So basically, the compressor, once again, will just make sure anything that's over a certain volume can kind of get smushed down. And the limiter makes sure that nothing gets above this threshold. It's like a really hardcore compressor. The limiter is just there for emergencies. But if we listen to this, however, it never gets above, as we can see here, -3.1. And it still sounds okay, so I'm not too worried about it. You can hear what it sounds like this. Since your gate is staying open long enough to catch those ends of words. However, since breaths always... It sounds okay, right? I'm not too worried about it. And that's why we have this set up. We have another compressor in our Finalize with the LUFS page, as well as a limiter on our master bus. So, to me, I think this is going to sound just fine. So, once again, we're going to render it into a finalized audio file. Again, we're going to use all the same settings, right? Render the file. And as you can see, the waveforms never got above about -3 decibels. So it's always within that standard. Okay, and that's it. So once you have that file rendered, you send it off to whoever your editor is or your manager is or whatever, and it's ready to go. As you can see, this is a lot quicker than doing it with Audacity, and that means that, especially what this means is that you can record a bunch of stuff at once, and rather than having to go through and apply all the effects to everything, everything's just already ready to go, and you can just take one large audio file, split it up into the different scripts, put it all into the thing, normalize all the audio at once, and render them all to their separate folders where they need to go. Definitely makes things easier, especially if you're doing a lot of scripts. Okay. So again, my name is Randy. If you have questions for me, feel free to put them down in the comments below, or you can send me a message on Discord and I'll try to get back to you. All right, well, that's it. So, get out there and make some money doing YouTube voiceover.